Talk about the banks closing, if you remember anything about that.
About
Or
what?
the war. The banks closing.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So I'll start in on that.
All right.
I graduated from high school in 1934. I intended to go to Illinois State Normal University to study to be a teacher. Well, my mother had a lot of poultry, and she took care of the poultry on our farm, and she took them in and sold them so that she would have money for my college education. The day she took it in that night, the banks closed and my money was frozen to go to college. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? And she says, oh, we'll get by some way. And she later said to the man, she had gone to high school with him, that was head of the bank, she says, why didn't you tell me that the banks were going to close? Here I put all of her college money in there, and then you closed the bank, and now it's locked up. Well, of course, he said he couldn't do something like that, you know. So anyway, then she started in. Different people liked her baked goods, and so she made angel food cakes, and she sold them, and she dressed chickens, and she sold them, and she did everything she could that she had available in order to get enough money again so that I could go to college, and she made it. She got it in, and so I got started to college. Well, I really needed a new coat too, a winter coat. And so she just kept on working and until she had enough money so that I could have a new winter coat too. And so then I went on to college. I roomed in a house. I didn't room in a dormitory. I was in a house, and we had cooking privileges. So we would fix our own meals, which was much cheaper than going out because we'd take things from home. We came home most every weekend. There was Ethel Rapp and I and Laura Mae Powell that lived in this house, and we would come home, and our parents would take turns bringing us back on Sunday night. We'd come home on Friday night, and we usually came on the bus, and then somebody'd meet us at the bus stop, and then we'd get home and then come back Sunday night. There was a boy that was graduated from high school with us, Ralph Wilson, and he knew about what time we'd be going back to school, and he was going to ISU too. And he'd always be out on the road with his thumb out waiting for a ride, and of course we always gave him a ride. That's the way he got back to school too, was through us. And so I went my 2 years. I graduated and started teaching in a rural school south of Pontiac. It was called the Kelly School. I had 10 students, 9 boys, 1 girl. But we did all right because we put on plays, and this one boy was willing to dress up and be a girl if we needed 2 girls for our Christmas play and so forth. And I taught there for 4 years, and then I sort of retired because we wanted to start a family. I was married in the meantime after I started teaching. Why, in 1939 I got married on June 3rd. And so Jim was born, and the schoolhouse across the river from where I live now had closed, and they wanted to keep it open until Joanne Jacobson graduated, because her dad had graduated from this school and he wanted her to graduate from this school. And he'd come over and sit on my doorstep and say, well, are you going to come and teach for us? And every week or so he'd be back, and I finally said, well, if I can get somebody to take care of Jim while I'm teaching, why, I'll come and teach. So Ruth Oscar's sister knew a girl that had graduated from Cornell High School, and she said to her, "Would you like to babysit for Marie?" And she said, "Well, yeah, I guess I can." She had a boyfriend, and he would bring her on Sunday night. She would stay with us through the whole week and go back on Friday night. He'd come and get her on Friday night and take her back. And so she was there constantly with Jim, so Jim really got good care. So I taught over at the school over here, and I had two students. I had Joanne Jacobson and my brother-in-law, Albert Jr. Koltveit. And then before the year was over, there was a little first grader that moved in, and so we really got to work on some things that he was a little bit slow in, because there'd been other students in the school, and the teacher didn't have the time that I had with only two students to work with him. So we worked hard and got a lot of things accomplished. And then we had a girl moved in, but she moved out before the year was over. But we did have a few coming in and out. I had a horse by the name of Dolly, and when the weather was nice, I would ride to school. There was a little barn like that I could put her in while I was there. It was really a pleasure to ride. I had about 5 miles to go, and I passed another school on the way, and the man that taught that, usually in the evenings when I'd come by, well, he'd come out and visit with me. I guess he thought it was kind of a rare thing to see me riding horseback to school, but I enjoyed it, and it was good exercise for the horse, and it was good exercise for me also.
You still have time, or no? You gotta get going?
Mm-hmm.
You got 15 minutes still now.
Okay.
Or what? You think you need to get going?
No, but I don't know.
You're running out?
Well, I was kind of gonna...
That's
the end of this teaching part and
Yeah.
getting to school.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else? You certainly have millions of other stories.
Certainly have what?
You certainly have millions of other stories.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. There's got to be one more quick one. Let me think.
Okay.
Do you remember anything about the war? Or it didn't really affect?
The war started shortly after we were married, of course.
Yeah.
And Oscar was not qualified to go because he was a farmer. He got, I forget what they called it, but he didn't have to go. Anyway, we had ration books. And you could get so much sugar and so much coffee and this gas and different things out of these books. You got them once a month. Well, we didn't drink coffee, so we'd give our coupons to somebody else that did drink coffee, so they'd have plenty of coffee. Sugar, everybody was a little low on sugar because we all liked to can fruit, and we needed sugar for canning fruit. And so we had to do that. We had a neighbor boy, Alvin Obert, that lived with these folks and helped his dad farm. His dad was getting old, and he was really a little old for the draft, but they took him. And I remember the morning that he left, why, Oscar and I went in with these folks to see him off, and his dad really felt bad because of the fact that he was going to be gone for so long. He didn't know really how long. And so anyway, why, he left, and while he was over in Africa for one place, while he was gone, and he sent us back a silk handkerchief that says Africa on it. And when he got back, why, we had a big party for him out at the American Legion. And we had food and dancing and so on and so forth. And we were glad to see him get back, but it was several years before he got back. In the meantime, why, we always had threshing every year, and this one year, why, Oscar was helping at Bally Wolf's, and they kind of kidded him because he was young and telling him he was getting a shirt tail load instead of a full load. So he really piled his hay rack up high this time. And when they were going, the bales of straw, well, they weren't really bales, but the bundles of straw, started slipping. And when they slipped, it frightened the horses, and they started running, and they ran through a fence, and he went off the rack and got cut up quite badly. And he was taken to the hospital, and so anyway, he mentioned the fact that when they took him to the hospital, why, this one young boy mentioned something about, oh, well, you couldn't hurt a Norwegian, and Bally Wolf says to him, shut up! And so they got him there, and so then I got a call and told about it, and so I went in as soon as I could. And so then he was in there for probably a week or more, and Alvin Obert offered to come and help do the chores, but Esther and I did the milking and the chores. She came over and stayed with me. Esther's Oscar's sister. And so that's what we did then, and that's how we got the chores done. Can't say that I liked to milk, but I did it anyway because it had to be done, and I didn't really know Alvin that well yet. After that, why, we got better acquainted, but at that time I didn't know him too well, and I wasn't too eager to have some strange person come around and milk, so Esther said, well, she'd come and stay with me, so she did, and we did the milking. And when he needed something, he wasn't supposed to really get out of bed because he had a lot of broken ribs and scratches around his ribs. But one time he wanted me to bring in his bed slippers, and so when I came, well, here he is standing at the window holding up a shoe, so I'd know what he meant that he wanted the bed slippers. I better quit.
You better go, yes. But you mentioned Bally Wolf?
Yeah.
Who's that?
He was a neighbor.
Oh. Down the road?
We lived here, and you go down the road and then turn here, and he was the first house here.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a little more later.
That's enough. Baked goods, and so she made angel food cakes, and she...
All right.
Okay.
The story of Pops hurting himself.
When your dad was 11 years old and in the 7th grade, why, he got an infection in his knee. He had like a little bump there, and...
How did he get it? Nobody knows?
I don't know how he got it. Anyway, I put peroxide on it, and I squeezed it a little to get the stuff out of it, and we didn't think too much more about it. We went to a football game, and he complained all evening of being cold, and he sat in between his dad and I, and so we took him to the doctor the next day, and he thought he had the flu. So he doctored him for the flu. And we went about every other day, it seemed like, to the doctor, and he kept thinking it was the flu, and kept giving him antibiotics, but nothing healed up or nothing got better. So finally I said to him, well, maybe we ought to check with somebody else. Well, he said, I've been kind of checking with the doctor in Streeter, and he says, I think we're doing all right. And I said, well, I'd like to have another opinion. And so he had Dr. Wright come in and look at him, and Dr. Wright decided right off that he had osteomyelitis of the leg, and that's what was causing all his problems. He was getting thinner and was having trouble walking. He didn't go to school in November. It was the 11th of November, and he didn't go to school the rest of the year. But his teacher said that he was very brilliant, and he passed him. And so he went into the 8th grade the next year. Anyway, they decided that they would operate on the leg, and so they operated on the leg. They cut it from the knee on down, probably a foot, I would say, and took no stitches in it, cut it down to the bone, and there it laid wide open, and you could look at the bone when you took the dressing off. And the doctor came out to the house, Dr. Schroeder, every day and changed the dressing on the leg. And then finally it started healing up. Judy was home at the time, and she kept track of him and cooked for him and so on and so forth. And so anyway, why, it eventually healed up. But in the meantime, why, we went to Bloomington one day, Dad and I, and we got a little tiny pup for him. And it was tiny, it was a little, I don't know what make of a dog, but anyway, he would know. And so we left it in the house, and he got this. He couldn't imagine what was in that box when we got home, and he was really surprised. He walked with crutches. I had some old crutches here that had been my grandfather's, and he used those and walked with them. And one day we came home, and he had walked down as far as the river, and he was really dragging when he got home. He could hardly make it. Christmas time came. He was operated on in November, and Christmas time came, and he wanted a BB gun for Christmas. So we got him a BB gun. Well, here he is laying in bed, and he can't go out and shoot his BB gun. So the doctor says, open the window and let him shoot out the window. So we opened the window, and David shot, and he shot a hole in the ceiling. And so we plugged it up with some cotton, and I don't think anybody ever knew it was there, and it's still there today, plugged up with the cotton, but I don't think you can tell where it is. I don't see it anyway, anymore. And so anyway, why, he got to try out his gun. And then toward the end of the year, why, Ethel Rapp came, and she was his tutor, and she helped him with some of the things that the school teacher thought he should be helped with before he went into 8th grade. But he passed him into 8th grade. He said he was smart, and no use to keep him back. And his teacher's name was Mr. Novotny. And so when he got in 8th grade, why, he didn't have any trouble. He got through 8th grade okay. But he had a long struggle, and then afterwards, he had trouble with it again, and he had to have the second operation. And we went down to Bloomington and to see Dr. Wright, because Dr. Wright did the surgery, and we had to go down there and see him, and I was teaching, and so I would take him down after I got out of school for the day. And I changed his bed every day because I didn't want anybody to get an infection from his germs. And I'd take him into Pontiac. They had a laundromat about a block from school, and I'd walk to that laundromat every day and wash those clothes in boiling hot water and then come back. And every day I did that when I was at school so that I could get back and forth real easy. And we kept on doctoring until they felt he was good enough to go without coming to see the doctor as often as we were. And he still has some trouble with the leg, and he has had some more work, I think, done on it in later years. But I don't know too much about that.
When did he start walking again without crutches? By 9th grade or 8th grade?
Well, let's see, November, December, January, February. He was probably in the spring of the year. I don't know just which month, but I know it was spring before he ever got out of bed. He was in that little room, and then he'd come out onto the couch, and that we didn't have a television until then. And we got a television because he needed something to entertain him. Before that, I always thought, well, if you got a television, they aren't going to do their homework and they aren't going to study like I want them to. So we hadn't got it. But then when he got that, why, we'd get him out to the couch and he could watch the television.
And do you know what he watched?
Well, what did he watch, Judy?
I don't know.